Kehlani, Lil Wayne, Another Lover. Let's talk about it. How y'all doing? Welcome to Let's Talk About It Music Reviews Season 12. How y'all doing? Welcome to the show. We're back with another night episode. Not recording at 5 a.m. Thank fucking God. I probably wouldn't be even incoherent. I don't even know if you listened to the last episode. But we're continuing the, interesting setup. Honestly, thank y'all for the support. I haven't even checked how y'all been checking out the new episodes, but I haven't even put a thumbnail. I haven't even. The only thing I've put on these episodes is a title, and that's kind of it. So, thank you for still supporting the show. But we got Kehlani. Kehlani uploaded her or dropped her self-titled album, Kehlani, and we've been checking out a few tracks. I've only checked out one track, and it was just with Usher. This is kind of the second most popular song off the album. Usually, how I go about when I check out songs off of albums, I like to pick a random track, and then I like to go from there. Check out more popular tracks off the album. For this album, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I just been kind of picking the features have been interested to me. Usher. Starting off with Usher, but now we got Lil Wayne. We got Lil Wayne on this track. I haven't heard a new Lil Wayne in quite a while. This could be an old verse. It kind of reminds me of an old verse. This reminds me of like that early kind of 2000s, kind of 90s sample like sound. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this damn song. Another Lover. Starting off with the instrumental, the beat. I like this beat. Usually when I talk about, boom bap style, like R&B, 90s, type beats, usually when it's kind of, used like this, it's kind of just the sample. Then you have the drums. Maybe you got some synths. Maybe you got some, like some piano keys that kind of have that 90s, 2000 sound. But this one actually has a lot to it. I really like the background vocals that really sound really cool. I like how they're kind of higher pitched. It kind of reminds me of those, older 90s R&B songs, which is pretty cool. And then one of the cool things I like about this is that there's different sequences of horns on here, which sound really fucking good in my opinion. So I really do like that, as you're listening to the beat, there's these like little other instruments that come in and you're just like, all right, that sounds really good. That sounds really fucking good. And then, you have all these little elements. And when you have all these little elements in your beat, it just makes it stand out more. It makes it, a way more enjoyable experience. I'm not listening to the same fucking drum loop, the same synth, loop, the same shit, it just gets a little bit monotonous. I do like how, this is a little bit different, and I do like those little horns in the background that just kind of come in. Now, Lil Wayne is in the beginning of the song. I will say, the rapping from Lil Wayne, I was a little scared. Usually with the new Lil Wayne, you could either get a good verse or you can get a pretty bad verse. Like, I remember when Lil Wayne dropped his Carter 6 album, and he had that song where he was rapping about elephants, and holy shit, that was just a horrible time, listening to him rap about elephants, and you hear the elephant noises in the background while he's rapping. It's kind of funny if you think about it, but goddamn, that was a shitty ass song. And I still see people, saying, oh, as this album has gone on, as people have listened to, that elephant song is not that bad. It's not the worst track off the album. No, that shit is terrible. Still to this day, if you put on that elephant song, I'm gonna kill myself listening to that song. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So no, still to this day, that song is ass. Hell no. But I will say this Lil Wayne verse is actually pretty good. I like the flows. I like how he's rapping on here. It kind of reminds me of, early Lil Wayne, on this album, which is pretty cool. The rap verse overall is pretty nice. So nothing to really say. I will say, I wish Lil Wayne was on this song a little bit more. Maybe him just saying, another lover, and throughout the whole entire song would have just added more to the vibe, of this like 90s, 2000s R&B sounding song. But, Lil Wayne's verse is pretty good. It's pretty short. I will say he kind of raps and then he kind of gets out of there really quick. But, he gets the job done. I like the flow. Sounds pretty good. And I will say, one complaint about this song is I think the hook is not that strong. I was really trying to give the hook a chance. I'm liking the beat. I'm liking the background vocals. And then the hook comes in. And, the problem with newer R&B songs sometimes, I feel like, the artist can go harder. The artist can, go more crazy on the vocals. And I just feel like this hook is kind of lacking. It's a little too empty in my opinion. It's a little bit too just letting the beat play out, kind of letting the background vocals kind of carry the whole entire hook. So that's my only big complaint, is that I wish the hook had a little bit more to it. But I will say Kehlani's verse, overall was pretty nice. The vocals sounded good. The singing was overall pretty good. So that's pretty nice. Overall, when we talk about this song, Kehlani, Lil Wayne, Another Lover, I do like the 90s, 2000s R&B sound. It's always going to, make me, really have a heavy bias towards this sound because, it is my favorite genre of music. And, Lil Wayne's rapping on here was actually pretty fucking good. So no big complaints here, but I will say the hook is definitely fucking lacking. If the hook just had a tad more to it, and I know sometimes I feel like I ask a little bit too much, but just a little bit more on that hook, a little bit more effort on the vocals, maybe holding out the notes on the hook a little bit more, maybe having a vocal switch up on the hook, just something to really set it apart. I feel like the hook kind of blends in too much with the song, so that's my only real complaint. But overall, this is not a bad song. And for the second song, I just kind of pick off this album. I mean, hey, it's probably a good album. I haven't listened to the album all the way, but 2 songs in, I'm having a really good time already. So overall, I will easily give this track a 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10, guys. What y'all think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't know. Let me know. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast at, make sure you follow, turn on notifications, guys. We're dropping new content every single day. And, we're continuing the bare bones setup. Thank you for all the support. Even, with, man, these episodes, they look a little rough. When I go on my YouTube page or I go on the, on the podcast feed, they look a little rough. They look a little, bare bones. But, just kind of deal with it. Next month, we'll be back in business. But yeah, I'll sell you a good one. Yeah, guys. Bye.